Hey folks, welcome back. And happy Yule. I can feel it in the air. Christmas is once again upon us, which means everybody can put their differences away to celebrate the birth of some guy who really just didn't need to die in the way he did, you know? Like, I think we can all agree that was a bit over the top. Well, folks, believe it or not, it's happening all over again, the end of the year. And with that comes the holiday season. Christmas, Hanukkah, the other ones that don't take place in December, but we always talk about them around this time of year for whatever reason. A time to spend a lot of money on your loved ones to show that they are, in fact, your loved ones. Nothing quite like the feeling of watching your mom open up a gift to find exactly what she asked for.
Oh, special K.
Sure, Christmas is coated in a thick layer of consumerism, capitalism, commercialism, but at the end of the day, it still serves as an excuse to get together with your loved ones and show off how much you love them. But the holiday season is still a stressful time, especially if you're an adult. Well, only really when you're an adult. Christmas fucking rules when you're a kid. You got so many social obligations, a lot of the time work becomes more stressful, and worst of all, you often find yourself rushing to get all your Christmas shopping done before the day of days. The rush at Christmas. It's a concept for which I can't think of a single segue into talking about video games. Rushing to get a video game out is not a new concept. There has been much ado on the internet about how game developers often experience ridiculous crunch times to reach a certain deadline. Sometimes it's not even evident in the final product, but other times it's really evident in the final product. And there ain't no boss who has stricter deadlines than good old Saint Nick. The rush to get products out in time for Christmas. It's a tale as old as... well, not as old as time, but it's pretty old. So for this year's holiday special, we're going to take a look at a bunch of games that have been rushed out in time for Christmas. As you can see, I've got my little tree here, and we've got all kinds of little goodies. So let's see what Sonic brought us this year. I mean Santa. Also, huge shout out to TV Tropes for this one. They've got a whole list online of things that have been rushed out for Christmas, so there you go. Wow, Sonic Boom! In its original packaging! Poor Sonic, dude. My man, he just can't catch a break. He has been floundering for the better part of the last 20 years. Sure, he's had a few decent games in between, but it's getting to the point that people are starting to say things like Sonic just isn't a good franchise, or Sonic simply doesn't work in 3D. And I'm not going to enter that ring, but I think it's worth noting that Sonic has an extensive history of rushed development, almost always in order to get games out in time for the holiday season. And one particular example is Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric, released on November 11th, 2014 for the Wii U. It was actually released alongside a 3DS game called Sonic Boom Shattered Crystal, but nobody cares about that one. Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric, or as I'm just going to be calling it, Sonic Boom, is a spin-off of the main Sonic the Hedgehog series based on the Sonic Boom cartoon that aired on Cartoon Network from 2014 to 2017. The cartoon is actually pretty good, honestly, but the game... oh man. Like, Sonic had been having a rough go of it leading up to this game, but Sonic Boom was on a whole nother level. It was a monumental occasion. People were saying that this game was as bad as Sonic 06. And whoo boy, that is not an inaccurate sentiment. This game is busted as hell. And it's not just busted as hell, it's also boring. Double whammy! The entire game is just spent walking around an empty, boring, open world full of NPCs that never really tell you anything useful. And when I say walking, I mean walking. Like, look, I'm a big advocate that Sonic doesn't need to be going full speed all the time, but like, how are you gonna make a Sonic the Hedgehog game and have him moving this slow for the majority of the game? Other than that, you got boring, brain-dead puzzles, speed segments that basically play themselves, and on top of all that, the game is way too easy. Like, I'm talking dumbass level difficulty here, folks. Like, you take so little damage from enemies, you'd have to not be paying attention to die here. Unless, of course, you walk into knee-deep water, in which case your character drowns immediately. What really propelled Sonic Boom into the trash hall of fame was the fact that this game was severely rushed in order to come out in time for Christmas, and as a result, holy moly is this game ever not finished. You maintain control of your characters during cutscenes, your homies die randomly, but one glitch that puts Sonic Boom on a whole other level is the infamous Knuckles jumping glitch. Not long after release, people found out that if you pause the game in the middle of Knuckles' mid-air dive move, it effectively resets the move, allowing you to do it again and again and again. And since most parts of the game are blocked by giant doors without invisible walls above them, this allowed people to progress into areas that they were not supposed to be in yet, and as such, weren't rendered fully. It also allowed people to skip entire huge chunks of the game. Unfortunately, the glitch was patched out soon after discovery, but it forever painted Sonic Boom's legacy as the one where Knuckles can jump really, really high. Wow, what a mess. But let's move on, shall we? We've got a lot more garbage to look at. Yeah, let's give Sonic a little bit of a break. He can only pick so many low-hanging fruit. I'm just gonna go ahead and rewrap this. Oh, wow! A Sony PlayStation Classic PlayStation. Rated M. So here we have the Sony PlayStation Classic. USB-AC adapter not included, it's a Christmas miracle! The PlayStation Classic was released on December 3rd, 2018 in an effort to emulate the success that Nintendo had had with the releases of their NES and SNES Classic consoles. The NES and SNES Classics weren't perfect by any means, but they were really a no-brainer when you think about it. They were relatively inexpensive, came preloaded with a ton of fan-favorite games, and appealed to a broad audience, be it younger folks who wanted to delve into older consoles, collectors, or even just people who fell out of gaming but wanted to relive their childhood without putting out a second mortgage on their house. The NES and SNES Classic consoles made a great gift. So when Sony announced their PlayStation Classic, the same concept but for their juggernaut of a best-selling console, it seemed like yet another no-brainer. And it truly was a no-brainer, but not in the traditional sense, if you catch my drift. The PlayStation Classic comes preloaded with 20 games, and there are certainly some bangers on here. Final Fantasy VII, Resident Evil, Twisted Metal, Grand Theft Auto, Metal Gear Solid. But there are also a number of odd choices, like Jumping Flash, Battle Arena, Toshinden, Super Puzzle Fighter Turbo, Intelligent Cube? What the I don't even know what that is. Whether or not these games are good games, you can't deny that this is a weird lineup. And that was a big point of contention for people. The PlayStation has a massive library of games. And it felt like a bit of a slap in the face that a lot of fan favorites like Spyro, Crash Bandicoot, Street Fighter Alpha, Tony Hawk, Parappa the Rapper, Tomb Raider, and Castlevania Symphony of the Night, just to name a few, were left out in favor of Wild Arms. You know, everyone's favorite, role-playing game. But if you can believe it, gamers had even more to complain about. As if the lackluster lineup wasn't enough, the games also had performance issues. Some of the games used the PAL versions for whatever reason, and probably worst of all, the console came with the original PlayStation controllers instead of the DualShock controllers. Like, why? It's not like the DualShocks don't have D-pads. Why would you include the inferior technology? But yeah, overall, not great. The PlayStation Classic gets coal. F*** you. Alright, let's see what other pieces of suffering Santa has decided to curse me with. You know, even though I'm a good person. Wow, The Legend of Zelda Collector's Edition. What the hell's this doing here?
While overall good games, Ocarina of Time and Wind Waker contain small issues as a result of development crunch in order to be released in time for Christmas.
Wow, thanks TV tropes, man. It really just wouldn't be Christmas without you. Yeah, that's right. Not even Nintendo is safe from my mean words. So Ocarina of Time and Wind Waker are two legendary games. One is probably my favorite Zelda game ever, and the other one's Ocarina of Time. And these are definitely not as egregious examples as some of the games we've looked at so far, but they both suffered from the rushed for Christmas phenomenon in rather small and kind of weird ways. Wind Waker, while an amazing game in my opinion, has one glaring issue that people still complain about to this day, and for good reason, and that is the Triforce hunt near the end of the game. After completing all the main dungeons in the game, you're tasked with sailing around the big open sea to find shards of the Triforce with the grappling hook attachment on the boat. This aspect of the game was so heavily criticized by fans and critics that director Eiji Onuma actually publicly apologized for the Triforce hunt, and it was significantly dumbed down in the Wii U remake of the game. According to TV tropes, Wind Waker was actually supposed to have 2 entire extra dungeons instead of the Triforce Hunt, but it was removed in order to get the game out in time for the 2002 holiday season. Arguably the strangest of all the games that we're looking at is Ocarina of Time, however, which only suffered from the Christmas deadline in the Spanish port of the game. You see, the Spanish translation of the game wasn't finished by the time of the game's intended release, and if they were going to delay the release, it would essentially mean that all of Europe would miss out on the game until after Christmas. So, rather than doing that, copies of Ocarina of Time sold in Spain came included with an 150-page guide with translations of all the English text to Spanish. So essentially, if you were a native speaker of the second most spoken language on planet Earth, didn't have the strongest grasp on English, and wanted to play Ocarina of Time, you had to sit there with a book and painstakingly read the translations of the text like a dumbass. This could have maybe worked in a more linear game, but considering how much freedom Ocarina of Time gives you to play in whatever order you really want, especially after the first 3 dungeons, I can't imagine how annoying this would be. Alright folks, we've only got 2 more, so let's see what we got here. Wow, Sonic 06? I didn't even know that we was there. Sonic 06, like, where do I even begin here? I'm not going to go too hard on this game because I can pretty much guarantee that I'm going to make an episode about it in the future, but I just couldn't help but talk a little bit about it here. It's arguably the best example of the whole rushed for Christmas thing. Well, perhaps the second best example. Sonic the Hedgehog, more commonly known as Sonic 06, was released at the end of 2006 for Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. Not only was this game rushed for Christmas, but it was also rushed in order to commemorate Sonic's 15th anniversary. And it was also intended as a reboot of the series for the 7th generation consoles. Let's not beat around the bush here, fellas. This game is fucking garbage. Like, it's almost not even funny to joke about. I feel like I'm making fun of a kid with a learning disability for not being able to do mental math. But it's okay, because that's basically just making fun of myself. This game has become infamous and is widely regarded as one of the worst games ever made. It's frustrating, difficult, the loading screens take forever, Dr. Eggman looks like this. The open world you run around, Soliana, is so empty that it almost comes off as creepy, and it's filled with these weird robotic NPCs that all talk with the same animation. But the thing that Sonic 06 is still famous for to this day is the sheer amount of bugs and glitches. You can make an entire video compilation of all the glitches in this game, and people have done just that. And again, I'll talk about this game at length in the future, but trust me, it's the kind of shit that you have to experience firsthand to really understand the sheer magnitude of trash we're dealing with here. Well, everybody, we've finally reached the last game, and it can't possibly be worse than Sonic 06. Right? CT. Here it is, folks, the granddaddy of them all, E.T. for the Atari 2600. For those of you who are unaware, E.T. is short for Entertainment Tonight, a news program where nepotism baby Ben Mulrooney and Carlos from The Zone stand there with a straight face and tell me information about celebrities that's none of my business. Wait, E.T. the Extraterrestrial is a science fiction film directed by Steven Spielberg and released in 1982. Now you might be saying, Ben, surely you've seen E.T., right? Yeah. I'm a huge Spielberg guy, obviously. I've seen The Goonies more times than I care to mention. Okay, fine, I admit it. I've never seen E.T., okay? I was born in 1996. What do you want from me? That said, I am aware of the cultural impact this movie had. E.T. Phone Home and the scene of the kid jumping over the cliff on his bike are 2 of the most iconic film moments of the 80s. You'd have to live under a rock to not know about that. And of course, despite it being the Stone Ages in terms of video game technology, Atari decided to develop and publish a video game based on the movie. What could possibly go wrong, right? Well, let's play the game and find out. Here's the title screen, and honestly, the art of E.T. is pretty good. Considering what they were working with at the time, I think they did a decent job. And then the game starts. Look, I don't like to be the guy to make immature jokes here, but E.T., he's got a penis. E.T.'s got a penis. Like, why? You could have just not put that one pixel there. Somebody must have, like, I know this was the early 80s, but as far as I know, penises still existed back then. Anyway, you get dropped in this forest area, and then you just kind of walk around. This number at the bottom indicates how many steps you can take before something happens. This thing at the top, I don't know what it does or means. Sometimes it becomes an arrow, other times it's like crosshair. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to it. Sometimes you collect things, and then this guy shows up and he takes it from you. Sometimes this guy comes and slowly carries you to what I assume is supposed to be a jail cell, though it could also be the Lincoln Monument, who knows. Occasionally you'll fall into a hole and you have to extend E.T.'s neck so that he can fly out of it. Again, I've never seen the movie, so this could be accurate. Now, I mean, this game is that's evident. We can tell that. But to be fair, the Atari 2600 had a lot of shit on it. But this one is really on another level. Like, E.T. always faces left when you're standing still. Even if you've been walking to the right, they just, like, they couldn't be to reverse the sprite. Come on, guys. Now, you've probably heard of this game. Even if you're not familiar with the Atari 2600, I'm sure you've heard about the absolute colossal pile of garbage that is E.T. on Atari. But the important thing about this game is that the game itself actually is only one piece of the puzzle. The aftermath is what truly put E.T. on Atari in the history books. Obviously, this game was rushed to be released for Christmas. It was made from the ground up in only 6 weeks in order to meet the deadline. And when it came out, it was such an unacceptable piece of utter and complete garbage that it almost single-handedly caused the video game crash of 1983. It was a different time, you know, there was no internet to warn consumers about bad games. So people bought it, realized how fucking terrible it was, and returned it en masse, causing a huge financial crisis for Atari and leading into the crash. If not for Nintendo pulling up and changing the world with the NES, home video games may have actually become a thing of the past, and it's all because of this stupid little alien. This game was so bad that Atari actually, for real, sent out 10 to 20 transport trucks full of unsold and returned Atari 2600 games to bury in the desert in New Mexico. That's real. Look it up. And because of all that, I mean, what better example of a game that was rushed for Christmas is there than E.T. on Atari? It nearly destroyed a multi-million-dollar industry just by being garbage. EA wishes they could make something that unfinished. Well, everybody, the worst part of Christmas is finally here. The part where you don't have any more presents to open. So, guess I'll go spend time with my family. Some stupid shit like that. But I hope you had fun looking at some terrible games. I know I did. So once again, we here at the Idiot Ben Mega Pizzaplex would like to wish everybody the happiest of holidays. And I hope that you aren't forced to bury any of your presents in the desert. Bye, everyone!